All right. So people from everywhere in San Diego, thank you everybody for being here today and for being curious and interested and motivated to kind of try to figure out what we're going to do next after some fairly momentous events in San Diego and around the country. My name's Wendy Galernter. I head up this Swing Left chapter of Take Action San Diego. And we have Help Desk Larry here in case anybody has a technical problem with the presentation. And let's get started. And so already many of you have gotten into the chat to say hello and where you're from. We will be taking questions at the end of today's talk. We usually finish up everything in an hour, so we'll be finished up at 5, but we'll take as many questions as we can get in until then. And then we always send out a video of this meeting and all of the links that I'm going to mention as I talk. And the links are all to actions you can take or information you can get. And Larry will also be periodically putting a link to all those links in the chat. So you'll have lots of ways that you can get to the information I'm going to cover today. But welcome again to today's topic, which is building on the No Kings momentum and what comes next. And it's a pretty simple agenda. It's been 2 weeks since the No Kings Day of Action on June 14th. It feels like at least 2 years to me and maybe to you because so much happens every day that it's incredibly hard to process. But we want to talk a little bit.
Sure.
Okay, yeah, I believe I am. People can see the screen, right? Hopefully. My wonderful help desk Larry is telling me that people may not be able to see the screen. And I'm looking in the chat. Yes, people can see the screen. Okay. Who knows? Anyway, we're going to talk a little bit about the No Kings Day of Action. It's been 2 weeks and there's some time to process what it was, what it meant, but even more importantly, where we want to go from now. Because there is tremendous momentum in what happened, and we want to capture that and even continue to build on it. And I'll be talking about a bunch of different things that people can be doing, and that'll be the end of this talk, where we'll talk about some upcoming actions and events. So, No Kings. A lot of you were there. You were either at Waterfront Park downtown or you were at one of 11 other events around San Diego County or one of over 2,100 events around this country. And then there were even more abroad. Indisputably, the largest single day of action in United States history, although the Women's March of 2017 was very close. In San Diego, we came very close to the Women's March, maybe surpassed it. Numbers are a little hard to get exactly, but it was a tremendous day with over 69,000 people just at the Waterfront Park March. Well more than 15,000 at actions all around the county, from Chula Vista all the way up to Carlsbad, to El Cajon and Rancho Bernardo. It was amazing. Over 5 million people participated nationwide. The participation approximately doubled that of the April 5th Hands Off rally. So that was April 5th. So just 2 months later, the size and the diversity and the strength of this pro-democracy, anti-MAGA coalition is growing in so many different and important ways. And I think that's probably the most important thing we can say about June 14th. But come on, it's kind of fun also to realize that it completely overshadows Trump's military fascist parade. And he knew it, and it really disturbed him, and can't help but feel happy about that. Um, it definitely is a turning point in public dissent, and everyone noticed, from the media to the legislators, even the Republican legislators, to regular people all around the country who I think were given courage by all of those who showed up and were there. And although there was some violence, unfortunately, and not from any of us, in Minnesota and in Utah, the rallies, for the size and the scope they were nonviolent, peaceful, and actually joyful. And this kid in at the waterfront park march, those of you who saw him got a treat. I only got to see it afterwards on the video, but he was playing the Star Spangled Banner on his trumpet, sitting on his dad's shoulders, and people were joining in and singing. And it really was the first time I ever felt very moved by that song. And if you haven't seen that, if you just Google boy playing trumpet, Star Spangled Banner, Waterfront Park, you will see the video. It's just a really wonderful thing. And I think one of the things also we can say about the No King's Day of Action is that the groups that put this on all around the country were very broad-based coalitions. It was ACLU chapters, it was Indivisible chapters, it was 5051 chapters, it was Swing Left chapters, it was people who weren't affiliated with any organization and wanted to be part of it. It was a tremendous, diverse coalition, and it really, although Indivisible National spearheaded this, it really was a decentralized effort that put all of this together in such an amazing way. So I think that's going to be a theme we keep returning to about how we sustain the momentum from this day. It's diversity, it's coalition, it's decentralization, and I'll come back to that. So what's next? And if our goal, very as simply as possible, is to basically discredit, dismantle, and defeat MAGA, then there's kind of four major categories I tend to think about what we need to do next in. And this is just to help organize the way we think about these things. And everybody's got a different way of doing it. And this is just the way my brain works. And hopefully it helps you a little bit. So the first category that we're going to talk about is we need to inspire and inform people and grow this movement as it has been growing already, not just in size, but also in diversity. Second, we need to disrupt, and by that I mean economic non-cooperation and other forms of disruption that make it uncomfortable, unprofitable for some of the pillars of support that are keeping MAGA there. So that could be Republican legislators, it could be the tech companies, it can be companies that get rid of their DEI policies. But those pillars of support need to be broken down, and there are tactics that we can all be involved in that help make that happen. We also, as we learn every day in tragic, more and more tragic ways, is we need to do what we can to aid and protect the vulnerable. And the vulnerable is everybody from immigrants to LGBTQ plus and trans people, to activists who speak out, and ultimately really all of us. We need to aid and protect the vulnerable. And finally, that fourth group is we need to organize for change, not changed, typo there. And what I mean by that is that in addition to getting rid of MAGA and the awful policies that they've implemented, we know things weren't great even before MAGA came along. And so when we organize for new elected leaders, for new policies, we also need to be looking not just at getting rid of MAGA, but at making things better than they were before. So in that first bucket of inspire, inform, and grow, of course, there's the rallies and large protests that we already know about. There were also the ones that happened all around San Diego. These pictures are just two, one from Escondido, where I think there were over 3,000 people, another from Chula Vista, where there were well over 1,000 people. And this is just a list of where some of the other protests were in San Diego County on June 14th. But it's also notable that there are sign waving and other types of protests going on a weekly basis throughout San Diego County, even as we speak. And I'll be talking about how you can get information and participating in them. And those, I think, have a value because they're neighborhood, they're local, people that you know will see you with your signs there, or handing out leaflets at the farmers market. And getting involved in growing the movement sort of from neighborhood by neighborhood is going to be an important part of where we go forward as well. I want to talk a little bit about growing because we know that we need to grow. And the question of how much we need to grow, comes up a lot. And something called the 3.5% rule, many of you may have heard of this by now. It's being talked about a lot. And this was developed by a historian named Erica Chenoweth at Harvard. I don't think they ever imagined that this number would be used in the context of a rule. Because what they did is they studied civil protests all around the world over the last 100 years and did multi-year studies, collaborated with a bunch of other researchers, and found that there were some things common to effective and successful civil resistance movements. One is that most of them were nonviolent. Another is that the participants in those movements used a diversity of tactics and had very diverse coalition of people involved with them, the sort of big tent thing. And then another thing they found was that if there was at least 3.5% of the population actively and sustainably involved in civil resistance, those projects or those movements had the greatest chance of success. But it's really not a rule. And so, but I think it does give us an idea of when we've reached the point, not just in size, but in sustainability, of really being effective and being able to affect change. So, inspiring, informing, and growing. We know about protests. Social media is going to be critical here. And in a future meeting with this group, we're going to come back to social media again, get more social media training, because the media narrative is critically important. Our narrative is critically important to growing the movement and getting to people who aren't necessarily engaged right now. We've done once, and we're going to do again, a workshop on letters to the editor. This is an underutilized way to get your word out in your local paper or your national paper, and to not just let people who read the paper know, but to let the editors of those newspapers know what's concerning people. But town halls is a really underutilized piece of what I think we can be doing to grow and to grow organically in our neighborhoods with our neighbors. And to talk more about town halls, I've invited one of our members, Peter Holmes, to talk about a proposal he has for something that I think has a lot of promise. So I'm going to let you take it away, Peter.
All right, thanks. Got my wife in the back here. Can you give me a thumbs up if you can hear me all right, Wendy? Okay, great. Yeah, I just want to go through a quick presentation. Wendy mentioned protests aren't everything, and so I've been thinking a bit about that question in terms of what comes next for us. And I wanted, as part of a broader set of many different actions, I wanted to just focus in on the idea of community town halls for a moment in terms of where that piece fits in and why it may be meaningful for us. So, if you could go to the next slide there, Wendy.
Hang on. Good.
Cool. So just to set the context, which Wendy already did really nicely, massive success, largest protest in American history, largest in the history of San Diego, I believe, when you count it in aggregate. Um, Not to mention, every one of these people showed up in defiance of threat to an extent. There's a lot of courage that it took for everybody to show up and a massive turnout. This is a huge win for us. But as Wendy said, protests aren't everything. And so, next slide, please, Wendy. What a protest is a symbol of power. I think that across the country, this sent a really powerful message to the Trump administration. And it also sent a message to all of us as organizers. I should have probably introduced myself a little more. I was helping organize this. At the top of this picture, where there's still a little green, is about where I was over by the stage. And actually, there was a media event there where we had a bunch of local representatives that spoke and gave very moving speeches, but it was a little bit disconnected because there's so many people that, you can't really broadcast that well. So I pointed out to say that this show of this participation was a tremendous symbol of power, but a symbol is only that. So I asked the question, what is real political power connected to a protest of this size? Next slide, please, Wendy. And I know this image is a little cliche perhaps, but I think it's really important and captures the idea here. But just to kind of level set at a fundamental perspective, real political power is being organized and having an identity, being able to communicate through your organization a meaningful strategy, having large scale numbers, which we do have, ongoing action and engagement. So everybody's participating. And then the last one is really important, which is a connection to political infrastructure. In the analogy of this fun little picture, that would be the teeth. That's the part where you actually kind of the rubber meets the road. And so I just wanted to kind of level set on, real political power goes beyond the protest and what does it actually look like to affect real political power? Next slide, please, Wendy. So that brings us to one aspect of a broader strategy, which is these town halls. So what is a town hall? Basically it's just a simple conversation between the community and local leaders. That's all it really is. It doesn't have to be a lot more complicated than that. The topic can vary depending on what's going on in current events, but it also bears a lot on what is our strategy? These conversations at the town halls are part of us figuring out what our strategy is. And so, they are themselves part of figuring out our identity and reinforcing our identity. They also have some really nice features, a town hall. Unlike these large protests, which take a long time to plan out, a town hall can be planned in a much shorter span of time, and it carries with it a very direct connection to local political infrastructure. Maybe that's the mayor coming down and speaking to people, or maybe it's Congress people, senators, local organizers. There's a direct connection between this type of event to those representatives in a dialogue there. Hyper local, meaning these can be done in all different neighborhoods. We saw all these different protests happening across San Diego. Those are all areas that would be a good fit for town halls where we can host these conversations. Um, and then the last sort of really important thing is that these can be done on a recurring basis. They can reinforce the idea that this isn't a one-time thing. This is an ongoing strategy, an ongoing process, and that visibility and connection I should also mention that it's offline. We're in this digital era where everybody is online so much, bringing people into the real world, seeing each other, talking to each other on an ongoing basis is a really important part of empowering people. And I missed one point before we go to the next one, which is that not only is this hyper local to different neighborhoods, but it also is scalable across the whole country, where we could be doing this everywhere once we sort of figure out how to do it. It's very repeatable and scalable nationwide. Next slide, please, Wendy. So I'll go through this pretty quickly, but the ingredients of a town hall are quite simple. And on the right here, I wanted to give a plug because Indivisible up north is already planning a town hall with Sarah Jacobs, Allison Gill, who gave some great remarks at the waterfront protest, is going to be hosting. And this is exactly what I'm talking about. So hopefully some of you guys can come out to that. This is an example of how simple it can be. It can be just one person or two people that are kind of the panelists, if you will. And, it's just a town hall meeting, and we can just do this all over town. This one's in Escondido. So just to go through the ingredients real quick, a venue, some chairs, the sound system, the leadership panel, some event coordinators. Importantly, somebody has to hold the microphone and make sure that the audience does not hold the microphone. We need to make sure these are somewhat controlled events. Promotion, we talked about the social media strategy. Promoting these is a really great fit, not only before the event, but after the event. Little clips of things and conversations are really great content for social media. Some volunteer peacekeepers, optionally get some local reporters, and optionally invite some police. They're welcome to be there. And then, photographers, videographers, all goes through a social media strategy. So the point here is that unlike the waterfront event, these can be smaller teams, and they can be done a lot more rapidly and in an agile format. Next slide, please, Wendy. So I'm almost done here, but I wanted to sort of circle back to, we talked about what real political power means, and the town halls to me really fit nicely into what real political power is, because they reinforce our organization and identity, where we're putting on these events and we're talking about what our identity is and what our strategy is, so that communication and strategy part that gets everybody on the same page is right. It is the content of the town hall itself. That's what the conversation is exactly. And then large scale numbers. I pulled this from Indivisible in terms of these were no Kings events, but I think that this image on the right gives a good sense for if we were doing town halls across the entire country, how meaningful and how impactful that would be. Ongoing action and engagement, that is the town hall thing, where we can be doing these on a repeat basis and establishing a cadence that basically is like a heartbeat of events that runs through all of our other strategies, which might be, targeting economic, boycotts or other types of actions. These town halls can kind of be driving and be the heartbeat within a larger set of actions. And then the last one, just to hit it, is that political infrastructure. All of these folks that are speaking and on the panels. This is a real direct connection to the political apparatus, and that is voting for sure, but it's not just voting. There are 100 other things that Wendy talks about in these presentations that we can do that are not in the ballot box that do have political impact. Pressuring our existing politicians to step up and get in the fight. All sorts of things that are great can come out of this. Next slide, please, Wendy. I think this is the last slide. So, to get the ball rolling, I live in Pacific Beach. Wendy normally lives here. She's on the road right now. So I wanted to just propose an event, which would be mid-July. And, these are folks, I haven't reached out to them yet, but these are folks that spoke at the No Kings Waterfront media event. And so just to kind of give you guys an example of what it would look like. And I would like to put this one on. So I'll be inviting these folks and anyone else that we can get that wants to participate. In terms of the number of people, it's fine if it's not that many people. It's fine if it's a lot of people. But this is an event I would like to start organizing. So I'll finish by saying that if anyone wants to help, Wendy, contact her. She'll get you in contact with me. And I would love to put one of these on. I think we'll learn a lot and we'll be able to figure out how to do them even better on an ongoing basis. So that is it for me. Thank you, Wendy.
Thank you, Peter. I saw these slides earlier, but I'm much more excited about them now. I think this really has potential. And I love the idea of it almost being a modular thing that, like you said, once we get some of the details worked out for implementing one of these, it's something that can be reproduced in other communities. And maybe with your help, Peter, but I think it's very reproducible. And I know there's a lot of people in this group that would be incredibly capable of putting on really good ones, and some people who have already done this. So yes, when we put the links in the chat and in your emails, there'll be a way to contact me and let me know if you're interested in getting involved with the first one, which would be in Pacific Beach, or other ones in your own communities as well. And now I'm going to move from sort of the informing, growing, and inspiring category to the disrupting category of actions that we can be taking. And as I said earlier, these are actions that are aimed at dislodging the forces that are keeping MAGA in place. Trump's not there by himself. He has networks of legislators and corporation owners and just powerful people who are holding him up. And some of them are there because they're greedy and or they're scared. But I think the purpose of some of these types of actions, like boycotts, strikes, or even general strikes, are to make it more uncomfortable for them to stay there than not. It's not necessarily to win them over to our side, although that would be wonderful, but it's to at least make it uncomfortable for them, unsustainable for them to continue holding that up. We have a long history in this country of boycotts and strikes and general strikes. In the 60s, it was the UFW and boycotting grapes and lettuce that was incredibly effective in getting farm workers a union. In even longer ago in history, there were a series of general strikes around the country, including this very famous one in Seattle, that brought workers' rights. And, I think it was for, among other things, for shorter workdays and better pay. But we have right before us in very recent history at least two what turned out to be surprisingly effective economic non-cooperation actions that really arose out of nowhere, that seemed to have been started by a person or a small group of people and just really took off. So the first one I want to talk about is the Target boycott, which got started just a few months ago when Target dropped its DEI policies. It was organized and supported, at least initially, largely by the African American community. But when people became aware of it, it got broader and broader and broader. And although it hasn't really been splashed across the news, Target has definitely suffered. Their sales are down. Their full year outlook was recently revised, saying the tariffs and the boycott are making their outlook go down and look much more pessimistic, and their stock performance is way down. And so I think that a boycott of this type, it's something we probably all need to jump onto and support and kind of get these things worked out, because I think we're going to be need to be doing more of these. And of course, the other effective one that many of you were involved in were the Tesla takedown rallies and actions that started taking place in February of this year and spread like wildfire to demonstrations in over 250 cities, plus more abroad. The result, at least as of the most recent data I can find, is that new Tesla car registrations are down more than 11% in California, more than 45% in Europe. Sales are down, the stock value is down, and it was an incredibly diverse coalition that pulled this off. Again, just started by a few activists, picked up on blue sky social media by other activists, and eventually coming to involve labor unions and environmental activists and pro-democracy activists in a really effective set of actions that discredited Musk and Trump, because of course Trump's the one that put him there. And these protests, along with Trump's fiasco of an effort to disrupt the Wisconsin Supreme Court race in April, completely shattered the idea of Musk's invulnerability, his somehow magical quality to always know the right thing to do, to spend millions of dollars and get whatever he wanted. That was really shattered. And what the ripples of this are, I think we're still coming to understand. But the fact that we could get together without any major national organization pulling this off, telling us what to do and how to do it, and get the world's most wealthiest man to end up leaving his position and slunk back to Tesla to try to undo the damage he did is incredibly powerful. So kind of need to keep those things in mind. I will just add on a kind of a side note. There is talk of strikes and ultimately a general strike that just stops work in a city or even across the whole country as a way of demonstrating the power of this movement. But I think we are some time off from something like that, but I'm pretty sure it's going to happen. But I will say there's going to be an unintentional kind of ability to see what a nationwide strike would look like, because farm workers are not showing up to harvest crops right now, whether it's in Texas or California or any of the border states in particular. Farmers are not planting crops. They're not harvesting crops. They're going to Trump and lobbying to get him to stop deporting their workers. And Trump, of course, has gone back and forth a million times about whether he is or he isn't. But the instability of that situation is going to start hitting our food availability and price very soon if it hasn't already. And I think when that starts happening, we need to amplify that and why it's happening as well. Protecting the vulnerable. And, this is the hardest one to talk about. And I think also the hardest one to figure out how we should be organizing ourselves to do this. We knew and we know and still want to celebrate how San Diego stood up earlier. Oh, I guess it was actually in late May, when ICE went to Buon Forchetta and raided there. And people who had no idea that this was going to happen, people who were not necessarily involved in any political resistance activity at all, stood up and tried to block the arrest of these people. They came back day after this happened to protest, and I think showed that people are not turning away from this, that they want, even if they're not organized in any particular group, they are in despair that this is happening in their communities. How we tap that energy and concern, I think, is an open question right now. And whether it means that there is a citizens group that goes with their cell phones to Home Depots or other places where some of these raids are taking places, and if nothing else, bears witness to the fact that this is happening so that it doesn't happen in secret, at least. Whether it's supporting the groups, and I'll give you the links to all these groups that are providing free legal services, bail funds, assistance for families who are being torn apart. We're not exactly sure. I think we're going to be some real creativity in figuring out how to address this problem right now, other than being prepared for something like this to happen the next time you're eating in a restaurant somewhere. Probably giving money to some of the organizations that are protecting people's civil rights is going to be the most effective thing you can do. But stay tuned, because I think there are people in San Diego who are working on other ways that, whether it's accompanying people to their asylum hearings, which the Catholic Church has taken a big step in protecting people as they go into the courthouse. There may be other ways we can all join in and help with this. There are people who have been doing this already, and they're very brave and admirable in doing that. Of course, immigrants aren't the only people vulnerable right now and under attack. We know the LGBTQ community, the trans community, activists, and people who depend on government services, food stamps, just sort of mind-boggling, all the educational programs, the after-school programs that are under attack, and then the nonprofits that service vulnerable populations are under attack. So we have our work cut out for us. It can't just be giving money, but that's going to be a part of it for right now. And what I hope in the next month or two is that we can invite people who are working on this very issue in San Diego to come talk with us with some more tangible actions that people can take. And these are just some of the organizations that I'm talking about. You all know about ACLU and the tremendous work that they do in defending civil rights for all people, but have a special focus on immigrant rights at this time. The San Diego Immigrant Rights Consortium, the Immigration Legal Services Coalition, Jewish Family Services are just a few of the organizations who are out there every day, making sure that as much as possible, people are protected and have the services that they need. I'm going to switch gears here, and it's for the final piece of this puzzle that I've been putting together with what we can be doing also, not just to get rid of MAGA, but to make things better once they're gone. And clearly, maybe you've all been harangued about this, but Paloma Aguirre has to be elected as a county supervisor on July 1st. The balance of power in the Board of Supervisors, which has access to a tremendous amount of money and also a tremendous amount of political power, it will be a 3-2 Democratic majority if she's elected, and it will be, if she's not elected, it will be a 3-2 MAGA majority. It will be a night and day difference. Things have gotten a little rocky with people are not returning their absentee ballots, their mail ballots. It's a majority Democratic district that she's in, which is mostly in the southern portion of San Diego. So right now, one of the most important things you can be doing is making phone calls, or even better, canvassing in District 1 in her neighborhood to get people to return those mail ballots. If they return them, she will win, and we will have a wonderful activist board of supervisors. And we'll give you the links for doing both of those things. There's phone banks and canvassing events every day. There's training. It's simple. It's basically, do you have your mail ballot? Have you sent it in yet? If not, here's how to do it. And you're on to the next person. So there's not a lot of convincing involved other than to just get Democrats and left-leaning independents to get their ballots back in. As a second bullet in this list, I had surveillance policies, and I was going to urge everyone to get involved. with stopping the police department from using automatic license plate readers, which is a surveillance technology that always had a tremendous amount of issues. Many of us were always opposed to it, but when we found out that they were sharing that information with ICE, it became an even bigger issue. And the city council has been trying to address this problem for a while. It was stymied, but somehow last week things started moving. And luckily, I just checked the web today and found out that as of yesterday, the police will no longer be using the license plate reader to collect that data. So that's an important win that none of us had to get involved in, but I can tell you there's a lot of issues around surveillance in San Diego County and in the city of San Diego that we can all be getting involved in the future. And I will be keeping you advised of city council meetings and board of supervisor meetings where these issues come up, because it's one of the ways the federal government is using our data to harm people and to deport them. Just a few other issues are elections. And we have elections in Virginia coming up in November for governor and their state legislators. I know it's far away, but it's a bellwether for the rest of the country because Virginia's elections are in odd years. And there is an opportunity to replace the MAGA governor who's termed out with the Democrat Abigail Spanberger. So we will be working on that election starting in a few months. And I think it will be an important one for everyone to be involved in. And then, of course, we have excellent opportunity to take back the House in November. What I do want to say is I'm glad that there's a little bit of time between now and when we really get involved with the Virginia or the House election, because I have some questions about the most effective way that people like us can be involved, especially in elections that are far away from us. And we know that in the past, letters and postcards have been tremendously effective in getting out the vote. But their influence has been waning recently, and there are organizations who have been tracking the impact of letters and postcards and getting out the vote, and it gets lower and lower and lower every time. The novelty of this is wearing off. And so while I think letters and postcards can still be really effective, I think the messaging, the targeting of the individuals who are getting that information really needs to be thought out better before we invest our time, our money, because it's an expensive thing for us to be doing, and our efforts in those campaigns. So I know that Vote Forward and some of the other organizations that have spearheaded this type of action are really thinking hard about this, which I really welcome. And what we also know is that the more local the race, the more these postcards and letters have an impact, especially in the Paloma Aguirre race, because people in blue states tend not to have been the targets of these before. It's a new thing for them to be getting mail about a candidate. So we really need to be thinking about that. We certainly need to be thinking about text messages, which now might be driving people against us when they get text messages. Again, they were incredibly effective initially. I'm not so sure anymore. So I think we're going to have a discussion before we really get involved in Virginia and onward about the most effective and how we can be the most effective with our time and our money for getting out the vote. I'll wrap up here just with some of the actions, just really a summary of the actions that I have talked about. Larry, I think, put in the chat a link to a list of actions that you can be taking. Certainly one of them is to check out our protest calendar, which lists a lot of the weekly sign waving events that go on all around the county. people would love it if some new people showed up to support them. So I encourage you, join one in Mira Mesa, join one in Carlsbad. They're all over the county. Join one in Chula Vista. For people who really want to delve into things, the book Civil Resistance by Dr. Erica Chenoweth is a very interesting read. Lots of thought-provoking information there. And I just gave you, the tip of what they talk about in that book. Help organize town halls. Join the Target boycott. Support civil liberties groups and volunteer and donate to support Paloma Aguirre's campaign. Larry wants me to take a look at some questions, but I'm just going to give one final slide here. Just if there's any things that I want to make sure people take away from this discussion today, that number one, there are things you can do that are effective and can make a difference. And hopefully the small sampling I gave you gives you an idea of some of those things. Whatever they are and whatever you adopt, we know that a diversity of tactics is going to be important, that just protests or just town halls or just letters aren't the way. We have to be hitting people on a variety of fronts with a variety of different messages, with the goal of discrediting and defeating MAGA and then building back a better country at the same time. Be strategic with your time and your money. Everyone's getting those texts and the, emails that, candidates are dying on the vine, and try to ignore those and really think through your time and also your money and how you want to be spending it, let's say in the next 18 months from now until the midterm elections in November 2026. And if you can, a lot of you have been doing a lot already, but if you can do some more, now is the time to do it. As we grow and inspire and continue to build. For some of you, it might be helpful to think in terms of tithing. I mean, what percentage of your income or what percentage of your day do you want to spend doing this type of work? For other people, it may be completely different way that you calculate it, but just be strategic. And in the same breath, I'll say, take care of yourself, because this is a long haul and we need to give time to ourselves to relax and enjoy life as well. Finally, let's remember it is joyful when people come together to build a better world. I get joy from seeing all of you out there and knowing all the good work that you're doing. So thank you so much for being here today. And now in the last remaining 10 minutes or so, I'm going to try at answering some questions. Is it worthwhile to protest outside Darrell Issa's office? And that's from Beth. And yes, Beth, there is a weekly protest outside Darrell Issa's office that has grown. And actually, I believe there's more than one. And if you check out that San Diego protest calendar that you have the link to in the chat, but I'll also put it in the email that I follow up with from this meeting. You'll see that there's a variety of opportunities. And the idea, again, is to expose his cowardice, because he hasn't had a town hall, and I can't remember how long. And actually, the town hall that Sarah Jacobs is doing in Escondido is called something like the town hall you deserve. So she is giving the town hall in his district that he should be giving, which I think is awesome. But yes, people have been out there for weeks and months on a weekly basis doing that. Beverly says, I'm concerned about using text banks. I'm getting very tired. Yeah. Okay. I kind of addressed that already. So am I. So is everybody. It was an easy way for people to get involved. And I think it's time, maybe, gone now. I think that technique has lost its allure and its effectiveness, unfortunately. Caleb, what can you do if your representative won't hold a town hall? Juan Vargas hasn't held one since January, and that was virtual. Um, and Juan Vargas, of course, is technically an ally of ours. I do have to say, and Scott Peters has also been reluctant to hold a live town hall. They do get trolls showing up at those things. They do have to step up their security. They do have to worry about the way those things go. So it's not a trivial thing for them to hold one of these things. I sympathize. But I think that if Juan Vargas doesn't want to organize one himself, maybe we should organize one in his district and invite him to be part of it. And I know, Caleb, you were in his district, so I think you just volunteered yourself for that.
Hey,
Um,
Wendy, can I jump in on that real
yeah,
quick?
sure.
I was just going to say that I don't even think, ideally we will have political representatives there, but I don't think that that means we can't do it. For example, the meeting we are having right now doesn't have any of our political representatives, but we as organizers can still hold these meetings, and it helps actually sort of, our identity as a political entity is reinforced when we put the meetings on. We want the politicians, but if they're not there, that doesn't need to stop us, I don't think.
Agreed. Did you want to say something? No. Okay. Beverly, I'm appalled at Trump's use of ICE to detain and disappear people. Where is the ICE detention center in San Diego with someone organizing a rotation of protesters who can stop ICE from profiling and detaining people who are not white? Yeah, white in quotes. Yeah, and Beverly, as I said, I think that this is very much in the works. And I don't know if people caught this story, but the new bishop of the Catholic Diocese in Bishop Pham in San Diego recently showed up at the courthouse to escort people to their asylum hearings and appeared to, not necessarily want a whole bunch of organizations grabbing onto his coattails in doing that. But there are now organizations getting together, including the diocese, including Alliance San Diego, including some of the immigrant rights groups, to talk about exactly that, whether it's at the courthouse or at these horrible detention centers where people were being taken away and suffering. It really is almost the priority right now to think about how we can be more effective that way. And I'm sorry to say I don't have the full answer yet, but it's something I'm definitely working on. And there may be people even in this meeting today who have already been involved in some of the actions along those lines. So I promise you we'll be doing better with getting that information to people. I agree that it's a complete priority. Oh yeah, Cindy, thank you for raising the make the Make Good Trouble protests. So better write that down to include it in my email to you all. So there's a proposal from the National Indivisible Group and also from a variety of other groups that July 17th, which is the anniversary of Congressman John Lewis's death, that date become a date to make good trouble all around the country. And there were several hundred of those events online, up online already. I believe there are a few in San Diego already being organized. And these aren't necessarily giant protests. Some of them are going to be raising money for food banks for people who are affected by cuts. Some of them are going to be sign waving. So there's a whole variety of things. They seem to be mostly neighborhood oriented. And I will get links to people about those, but there's definitely activity in San Diego and around the country for that day. And, the stature and the kindness and the commitment of John Lewis is such an amazing contrast to Trump that it's really worthwhile amplifying him and everything he stood for on a day like that. So I think it's an important and very good idea. And Cindy says she sees one in Escondido already. Yeah, okay. And I know there are at least a few others in San Diego being organized, and I will get the links to people. Yes, and Victor, or Vixter, sorry. You will get a recording of this and also all of the links that I'm mentioning and a few that I forgot to mention, but that I'll put in as well. And we usually get those out within 24 hours of this meeting. So definitely do that. Please share as widely as possible. We want this information to get out to people. And, the most critical thing you can do in the next 48 hours is to do a phone bank or a canvas for Paloma Aguirre. You can even do one after you get off this call tonight. And but certainly tomorrow, Monday, and up through Tuesday, there'll be an opportunity to help her campaign, and it can really make a difference. I think. Oh, okay. And John says there are some ISA-based protests at Parkway Plaza in El Cajon every Thursday, and Saturdays have been added as well. And do you have some? No? Okay. No, I think I'm going to end there. There were a few more people did contribute some other information to help answer with more specifically some of the questions people asked about where protests are. Although I think there was one final question I wanted to answer. Are there organized phone banks to call California reps and other outside of California? And yes, Judy, probably the most significant of those are to call people who live in districts that have Republican congresspeople and senators to get them to vote against this horrible bill that they're trying to push through, that's going to make cuts across the board to just about everything that's important. So I will include those also. Yeah, and fivecalls.org is where I usually go to get that information. Pass this back to you, Larry. But I will give you guys links to make those calls. And I thank you for all of the really good questions, everybody. And amazingly, it is 5:01, just about time to end the meeting. But I just want to thank you all again for being here today on a Saturday afternoon in the summer. It means a lot, even just to be together virtually. It means even more when we're together, being activists and doing good things. So thank you so much. Look for an email from me in the next 24 hours and have a wonderful evening. Have a great time making those phone calls for Paloma. Take care, everybody.